Hello there, all you beautiful people. My name is Lebushki, and welcome back to another movie review. This time for Lee Cronin's The Mummy. Now, let me start off by saying we've been getting a lot of good named monster flicks lately. Nosferatu, Frankenstein. We'll even have Werewolf at the end of this year. We've been getting some good horror movie monsters back again. Granted, there's been a lot of Frankenstein iterations. There's been a couple Nosferatus, certainly a million Draculas, and there's been a fair share of werewolf stuff. But one genre that I feel like doesn't get a lot is the mummy universe, the Egyptology universe, if you will. We got a couple movies because, mummies are still pretty cool. But I think stereotypically, they're not thought about in the same way as the other monsters. Because at least the image I build up in my head when I think about a mummy is I think about the slow, almost zombie like creature from Scooby Doo. And that's not an entirely enticing picture to paint when making a mummy horror movie, but I still feel like there's definite potential. The Brendan Fraser mummy movies are pretty good, in all honesty. They're not like the best thing ever, but in terms of making like a compelling and interesting, somewhat spooky, not necessarily horror, but somewhat spooky PG-13 movie, dude, it creeped me out when I was younger. I think it works. I think it works. I think those are some of the best movies ever. I'm not even gonna lie. So, needless to say, I was very excited to see Lee Cronin's The Mummy. Very excited because I just wanted to see mummies in a horror context again, and it didn't really live up to the hype. It didn't. It didn't. It didn't tickle my mummy fancy. It it kind of disappointed me. So let's hop into what I mean specifically. First of all, this is the best unintentional Resident Evil 7 adaptation. Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil Biohazard is a fantastic game. And I mean, I love that game. And that's pretty much what this movie feels like. It's not necessarily a spoiler, but if you watch this movie, you'll understand what I mean by it. The Mummy movie doesn't feel like a Mummy movie, it feels like something completely different. This felt like a more accurate Resident Evil adaptation than the actual Resident Evil movies have been. So, explain that one to me because I'm certainly confused by it. And, as a horror movie, it it works. It does work. It's not unenjoyable and it's certainly not bad, but I wouldn't call this a mummy movie. On the bright side, there was great camera work and, great angles, great utilization of space in order to create unique horror. There was a lot of really funky choices on how to create scares. There's a lot of things that really weird you out. This was a very juicy movie. Lots of lots of bugs, lots of gore, lots of squishy sounds. So pretty weird. And if you don't like those sounds, sorry, I just made them right into the microphone. Uh, but yeah, this movie's pretty squishy. And then probably one of the worst bits was generic characters who are completely unmemorable. I can't really even begin to tell you anything about the characters other than there was mom, dad, brother, and sister, and then dead sister. That's it. Father was a writer or a reporter or something. He was something like that, and that's all I can tell you. That's literally all I can tell you. They weren't anything particularly interesting. They try to tie in a theme of like family and everything that doesn't really work just because this movie doesn't really seem to know what it wants to be. So it's kind of odd. It feels uneven in quality because of that. And none of the performances were particularly anything amazing. None of them were like none of them had me like, "Oh my gosh, that was fantastic." They were pretty stereotypical for a horror movie. Not the best in the world, certainly not terrible, but just because they were so unmemorable, I like severely taken away points for this because I saw it like I saw it a couple days ago, and then within the next 24 hours, I had pretty much forgotten half of the things that were supposed to be memorable. And that's not what you want. You want your characters to be memorable, to stick out. Like I can still remember, I haven't seen it in maybe about a year. I still, no, actually, yeah, about a year and a half. I still remember Nicholas Holt's character from Nosferatu. I remember Lily Rose Depp's character from Nosferatu, Willem Dafoe's, Aaron Taylor Johnson's. You need that kind of thing. And it's not necessarily just a star power um sort of thing. Like I didn't know any of these actors, but I can also tell you I didn't know Lily Rose Depp until I saw her in Nosferatu. And she gave a great performance. I don't know any of these actors. None of them really gave great performances. So beyond that, I really can't do much. And another big problem is that this is hardly mummy related. It's about 10% mummy, 25% horror, and like 65% Resident Evil 7. The girl's supposed to be a mummy, but she's mostly just kind of like an exorcist, typical possession type of thing. They aren't even in like Egypt or anywhere that stereotypically has mummies. But they're in the American Midwest, so don't worry, they're still sand. It doesn't work. All these things just don't work well together. There's also, no, I forgot to mention, but there's also a lot of really stupid character decisions, which even further makes the characters unmemorable. Because then it's like, oh, great, I have to remember that that guy made the dumbest decision possible, or that lady in this case made the absolute worst decision possible given everything that was happening. And so, yeah, this feels more like it doesn't feel like a mummy movie. At least the mummy movie, the Brendan Fraser one, had mummy elements. They stayed for the most part within Egypt and that kind of area. That's what's kind of needed. Some sort of additional lore tidbits and interesting things that can happen so that the mummy itself is further propelled as a great character as a villain. But because it's hardly mummy related, it just feels like some chick is possessed and she's kind of decaying and she has some strands wrapped around her that kind of make her mummy ish, but not really. So yeah, ultimately, those were my problems. I gave it a C minus, a 50 out of 100. It's pretty middle ground, ultimately. Again, it's not a terrible movie at all. It's a terrible mummy movie, but it's a pretty compelling and decent horror movie. And if that's what you're looking for, then you'll still find it in this. Just don't expect it to be very mummy esque. But that is all I have to say. Thank you everyone so much for joining me for another movie review. I hope you're all having a wonderful day, whatever you shall be doing. And of course, as always, go see a movie. Movies are meant to be seen in theaters, even bad ones, even weird ones, even squishy ones. So, y'all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take it easy. Peace out.